At this point, you should have two things. The first is the Droid Terms example app downloaded onto your phone. You're not downloading the code, just the APK. This app, which you did not create, will, just by downloading it onto your phone, store all of this data onto the phone. The second thing that you have is the code with which to create Quiz App. And right now, that code has a permission to access the content provider connected to Droid Terms example. And this is what gives you the ability to access Droid Terms example's app data. Okay, so there are 5 steps to adding content provider access to an app, and you've done the first one. The next 3 steps are shown here in these 2 lines of code. This code accesses the correct content provider and grabs some data from it. We've got some new concepts and vocabulary here, so I'm going to break it down. The first new concept is the content resolver. So our original diagram is fairly simplistic. Let's look at this drawing that we saw before. The more accurate version of this drawing is this. And this drawing involves a content resolver. So what's the purpose of having this class sit between your app and direct access to the content provider? If you think about it, there are multiple content providers on your phone. And you add more content providers when you download apps that store local data which use content providers. Besides the Droid Terms example content provider, you have a content provider for contacts. Your device has one for user files on the device, one that keeps track of user alarms, a calendar provider, and some others. Also, your app is not the only app running on the device. There are other apps that might also be using content providers in parallel. Managing what content providers are talking to what apps and keeping all the data in sync could turn into a huge traffic jam. That's where the content resolver comes in. The content resolver acts as an intermediary between each app and the content provider or providers it wants to access. It handles inter-process communication and keeps everything in sync and running smoothly, even if you have 5 processes accessing 2 content providers. So whenever you want to use a content provider, you'll need to do it through a content resolver. Okay, so now you know what this first line is doing, getting us a reference to the system's content resolver. This is the next step for accessing the content provider.